And welcome to Hannity. So tonight it was billed as the debate of the century, and it did not disappoint. Now, last night's presidential showdown between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton was the single most entertaining and most watched debate I've ever seen. And facts are just facts with Nielsen ratings, and it highlights just how out of touch, I argue, the mainstream media is with you, the American people. Now, a female viewer to this show sent us a note. I think it sums up perfectly when she said this. She said, "I thought he did well until I started watching the after shows and they mentioned all of the lost opportunities." Now, if you listen to the elites in the punditry class that are on television and radio, they almost universally, they think Hillary Clinton won that debate. But millions of you, Americans, voting online, you thought Trump won the debate. Let's take a look at a few of them. Drudge Report. He had Trump winning 82-18. CNBC, 68% think Trump won. Time Magazine, 55% for Trump. Breitbart, 76%. Fortune, Trump wins there. Slate Magazine, and it goes on and on and on, as you can see. Now, to be fair, the Clinton News Network, CNN, they did have Hillary winning, just to be fair. And as you can see, there are many, many others. But the question is this: how could the mainstream media try to say otherwise? Now, the answer is actually quite simple. There are two very different standards by which the debate you saw last night is being judged. Now, just look at these numbers from Gallup. Congressional approval rating now at 20%. Look at this. Trust in the media just hit an all-time low. Only 8% of the American people think that they have a great deal of trust or deserve a great deal of trust. And we also cannot ignore that in almost every exit poll in the Republican primary, remember this? It showed a majority of Americans, Republicans, felt betrayed by their leaders in Washington. Now, this gets to the heart of what happened last night. Now, if you're a typical journalist, typical politician, you're using a standard that I argue no longer exists for real-life Americans. Now, these prepared zingers of Hillary, written by somebody else, perfectly memorized, robotically uttered by her, that's old school. That's outdated, and I would argue out of touch. Now, the core of Clinton's argument remains the same. More taxing, more spending, more regulating, and basically repeating all of Obama's failed economic policies, except she's going to take demonizing corporations, attacking the rich to a whole new level. Now, she'll be President Obama on steroids. Are you ready for that? Have the last 8 years been good for you? Now, Clinton also fundamentally denies the truth about how dire the economy really is, but the American people feel it, just like Lester Holt, in his opening question, denied the reality of where we really are as a country. Here are the real numbers that Lester should have brought up. Now, we have the lowest labor participation rate since the 1970s. Almost 95 million Americans are out of the labor force. America's now had the worst economic recovery since the 1940s. The country has the lowest home ownership rate now in 51 years. There are almost 13 million more Americans on food stamps, another 8 million more Americans in poverty. Over 43 million Americans live in poverty. Median household income, that's lower than it was in 2007. Today in America, 1 in 5 American households don't have a single family member in the workplace. 1 in 6 American men, ages 18 to 34, they're either in jail or out of work living in mommy's basement. And President Obama will leave office having accumulated more debt than every other president, all 43 other presidents before him combined. Now, African Americans, they have been disproportionately impacted by these failed policies. There's been, since Obama's president, a 58% increase in the number of African Americans on food stamps. There has been a 20% increase in the number of African Americans who are not working. They're out of the labor force. Now, this is the great divide. Americans know this. You're living this. These are real people, real suffering brought on because of Washington, D.C. So the debates about the old standard, let's memorize our lines, let's regurgitate them robotically, and let's get our zingers in there that somebody else wrote, well, that's disconnected from the real suffering of real people caused by government. Now, my overpaid friends in the media, well, they have their chauffeur-driven limousines, they like their fine steakhouses and expensive wine lifestyles. None of them are feeling this, the people you're watching on TV, and therein lies the contempt. Now, how can we afford all that Hillary Clinton proposed last night when we have $20 trillion in debt and $120 trillion in unfunded liabilities? Watch this.
Let's have paid family leave, earned sick days. Let's be sure we have affordable child care and debt-free college. We can deploy $500 million more solar panels. We can have enough clean energy to power every home. We can build a new modern electric grid.
I thought that was what Solyndra was all about, shovel-ready jobs that weren't so shovel-ready. What she's proposing is mathematically impossible, and that's where the disconnect exists here. In the African-American community, Donald Trump rightly brings up that in Chicago this year alone, over 3,000 people have been shot. And, of course, 3,676 people have been killed since Obama became president just in the Windy City. And somehow Hillary Clinton says, well, everything's just fine. Now, we have failed the African-American community, and also we're failing the country. They're failing schools, crime, poverty, drugs, and as you know, the list goes on and on. And Hillary doesn't seem to care about these facts. The media doesn't care about these facts. They just want the vote every 4 years of black Americans, and the Democratic Party demonizes Republicans and calls them racist. It shows you just how disconnected she, liberals, and the media are from reality today. Obamacare is another perfect example. Now, Lester Holt last night, he didn't even bring it up or point out that Clinton wants to expand the big government program that is crushing you, the average American. Remember all those broken promises about keeping your doctor, keeping your plan, and saving $2,500 per family per year? None of that happened. The average family lost their doctor, lost their plan, and are now paying, on average, $4,100 more per year for employer-sponsored plans. Now, our friends in Washington, D.C., they don't seem to care about this. They have great plans. And the same goes for our friends in the media. They have great plans. And on foreign policy, we've got another huge disconnect. Hillary Clinton can't even say radical Islam. That didn't come up last night, except for Donald Trump. But the elites in the media, they don't care about that either. And they're also refusing to acknowledge the death and destruction that she created as Secretary of State. They want to talk about birtherism. Well, ISIS is now spreading all over the globe, including right here in America. Libya, complete chaos. Iran, the largest sponsor of state terror, they got $150 billion richer thanks to Hillary and Obama and that nuclear deal. And all the gains, 5,000 Americans fought, bled, and died in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Ramadi and Tikrit and Fallujah and Mosul has all been given back to ISIS by way of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's bad policies. Now, Hillary says it's a mistake, but what if it was your son or daughter that died? Flat out ignoring and disregarding the thousands and thousands of American kids who lost their lives and limbs, and her saying it's a mistake, we need to learn from it? Now, my point is, D.C. politicians and the media, they don't seem to care that much because either they're not the ones fighting, bleeding, and dying, and they're not the ones suffering. And therein lies the pole divide. The media, they have their spin. The pundits have their spin. The politicians have their spin. But you, the American people, in poll after poll last night, you saw a very different debate.